Hey guys, this is Adam Baker, and I'm here with Gabe Walls, who
Wallington.
Gwallington is his new nickname, who has achieved legendary in about 2.5 days playing constructed, right?
Yep.
2.5 days. Because you donked around at legendary a little bit last night, but you hit it about halfway through your third day playing.
Yeah.
Constructed.
Yeah. Well, my sixth total day playing the game.
Yes, exactly. So you played arena for like 3 or 4 days
Mm-hmm.
to learn some of the cards, and then once you started constructed though, it was 25 to legendary, which I was pretty impressed with. So good job.
Thank you.
And what we're gonna do today is go over the deck that you played all the way down. Right, you never changed.
Right.
You changed some cards, but you never changed the deck.
Right, and it's called gualocks.
Gualocks. It's based off of Handlock, which was a popular deck, and our friend Chris had just showed you a deck list. And
yeah, Chris Anderson.
And then over the course of the 3 days, you changed a significant amount, up to a third of the cards that were in that original deck list. So that's what we're going to go over, the deck that you actually achieved legendary with. Got it? So let's start up here at Soulfire. How did you like this card? It's pretty much just a staple, isn't it? It's in most decks. Is there anything that was unique about this that you especially liked about the Soulfires?
Yeah, I really like the Soulfire. I don't see it ever being cut from a deck like this because your mana is so intense, and you really, with the ability to draw cards with your life total as your life tap, you really want to be able to do things that allow abuse of that in the game state and affecting the board.
Yeah.
And Soulfire really does that. It allows you to use all your mana and then still have another effect. And these free effects in Constructed really give you an advantage. So Soulfire is a staple in Gualocks, and I don't ever see it being cut from the 30.
Yeah. And one thing I actually picked up from you, and I'll just comment on it really quickly, is like you will Soulfire with like 4 cards in your hands and like a legendary. Like if it's good for your board position right now, like you use it a lot more frequently than I would, because I kind of play more scared. So that's something I'm picking up on. Do you want to like comment on that, or like when does it matter? Or
yeah, this game I've only been playing for 6 days, but this game is definitely a game of momentum building, and it's really about incremental advantage at the very beginning. And I'm willing to sacrifice my hand to control the game and the board, because later in the game I can always trade my life total, like I said, with my life tap, for more cards.
Yeah.
And so I just really want to be able to have that option, and I don't really care about losing any of the powerful cards other than Lord Jaraxxus in some very unique matchups. But you can't let people have Nat Pagel. You can't let people have their Murloc Lords, and you just got to be able to kill them quickly and trading your cards.
Regardless of what you discard, basically.
Right.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Let's move on to Mortal Coil, which I know from watching the stream last night, you were kind of iffy on. You guys had talked about maybe taking it out, and then you had kept it in, and it had paid off for you in some ways. Why is this card in the deck? It's not in every deck, but why is it in your version of this deck?
One, it's another way to gain an advantage, get those cards back. For the Soulfires, it allows you to trade early up. It's like giving a lot of your creatures +1 power. It also kills and handles the Murloc deck nicely, which is a really tough matchup if you don't draw some very specific cards. And it combos in later games with Blood Mage Thalnos nicely to do 2 damage at times. And with Hellfire, it allows you to kill some of those tougher to kill creatures without losing too much of an advantage.
Yeah, and some of the decks are playing more Shadow Flames. We'll get to that in a second. And you're playing less, but more of this early. It's a nice way to kind of switch around the control. This one is really interesting. It's foil. It looks pretty.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Voidwalker. Why are we playing a 1 of Voidwalker? Kind of the same reason as Mortal Coil?
It's a similar card in that it can be used early in the game to control those rush matchups, but it also allows you to use your mana efficiently later in the game. Sometimes you're going to get in situations with this deck where your hand gets clogged and you just get out-tempoed. And what it does is it allows you to put a creature in play they have to deal with, and they can't be super efficient in clearing your board or killing you. And it allows you to go, say with 7 mana, 4-drop, 2-drop Voidwalker, instead of just 4-drop, 2-drop stuck with a card in my hand.
Yeah.
And that really gives you a lot of chances to get extra turns and get to your late game cards. And it's not something you ever want to draw 2 of. It's not something that you really want in your opening hand, and you often mulligan it. But it's a nice card to draw throughout the game and fill out your curve to make sure that you don't fall too far behind.
And again, in specific matchups, I've seen it just like blow out some of the aggro decks, or like buy you time to get some of the bigger cards.
Yeah, definitely.
That on your stream,
which is an added bonus, and that you want versatility in this game, and it's very versatile in that.
And you cut Ragnaros for it.
Yeah, which
so
that's a
big like epic 8/8 legendary that defines some of the games or some decks, or 1/3 Voidwalker. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that you've tested both and that you settled on Voidwalker with the deck that hit legendary. All right, Ancient Watchers. I mean, well known in the community. Well know what this card does. What was your experience with it over the last few days going through the ladder?
Cool card, cool mechanic, tough to deal with, can give you a real advantage early, allows your deck to get aggressive sometimes if you go turn 1 Ancient Watcher on the draw, and then follow up with a 2/1 Ironbeak Owl. Often decks will be really surprised by that when they think you're going to be this hand-lock control deck, and you can just rush them and then burn them. And it puts them in a awkward game state, and also allows for some really powerful turn 6s with Ancient Watcher, Defender of Argus. When you're a little behind, it really gives you a ton of value in mana per power and toughness.
And like many of the control decks that are playing Ancient Watcher, you're playing the 4 Taunt guys. You're also playing the 2 Ironbeak. So you have 6 ways to manipulate this card. Actually, 7 with Shadowflame, which we'll talk about. So there are a lot of ways for you to manipulate this card, which I've seen you play in all different ways.
And often, it's such a scary card. Even the few outlier times you don't have a way to affect it, they deal with it sometimes because they're just afraid of it getting bigger.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Blood Mage, Thanos. When I was watching you play, the times that you drew this card, I was kind of iffy about it, to be honest, on your stream. Is this 100% solid for you, or are you kind of on the fence about this card in this deck?
I actually took it out a few times as well. Going down from level 25 to legendary, there's a lot of different metagames within those levels, and a few times I took it out and was a little hesitant and quickly put it back in. It's not something that you can see the value for immediately, but that +1 spell damage is so powerful with cards like Hellfire and cards
Mortal Coil.
And Mortal Coil and Soulfire. I mean, 5 to 4, that's a big jump, and Hellfire 3 to 4 is a big jump.
Yeah, kills Yetis, kills some of the 5/5 Druid guy. I mean, I've seen you, especially killing Yetis. It seems like they're all over this format. I've seen it pay off big time there. So.
Yeah, and so he's just. It makes sense. They know what they're doing with the orange cards. He is powerful enough. He cantrips. Often he gets silenced, which is a big testament to how powerful Death Rattle draw card really is in this game, and how powerful Life Tap can be. It's just a really cool card that allows for a lot of versatility in a lot of games.
Yep. So we've already talked a little bit about Ironbeak Owl, and we'll start to move a little bit quicker since we've talked a lot of strategy here in the early cards. Anything special about this? I mean, you're never going to cut this card when you're playing Ancient Watchers. Even without it, you probably are going to play this card.
Never getting cut. Silence is a staple in my mind for this game. There's too many powerful mechanics. It shuts them all down. It's also a 2/1 against Leper Gnome. It's a really powerful card. It's like gain 2 life and trade with Leper Gnome. That's really powerful, and it's just a super versatile 2-drop, the best one in my opinion.
And so much better than the 4-drop, especially in your deck, because you got the 4-drop 4/3 that silences, but
yeah,
that's going to clog up your deck.
I'm not interested in playing anything smaller than an 8/8 on turn 4.
Exactly. So, all right, Nat Pagel, you've had a love-hate relationship. You've gone back and forth, and you actually told me before recording that you're thinking about taking him back out. When is he good? When has he been good for you? Just where are you? Why are you on the fence about him?
He's great in very few matchups now. I've noticed the better competition. I'm playing the best players on the planet now, and so the better competition he's not great against, because you don't really want cards you're not sure how they're going to affect the game. And if you miss with this deck with Mountain Giant in your hand on turn 1 or 2 or 3 with this guy, it drastically affects how the rest of the game plays out.
Yeah, what turn you can get the Mountain Giant out.
Exactly. And against the opponents that don't handle him well, and their decks are a little less powerful, he does give you a massive advantage. Also against a deck like Priest. But I think because of the Giants and the 8/8s, you don't need him necessarily. I would say as you're grinding up through the ranks, I would definitely have him in your deck as a big advantage. He has to be answered immediately. He is always gain 4 life against the beatdown decks. If they ignore him, they are generally going to lose, but that's all he really is. He's gain 4 life, half the time draw a card, and against some of those matchups, if you miss twice, and that happens 1 in 4 times, if you miss twice, you're really at a disadvantage, and I'd just rather life tap and have something more powerful now. But I did enjoy him, and I see him fitting in a lot of archetypes in the future.
So if you have him and you're grinding up, I mean, it's pretty powerful to play in the early levels, but not necessarily something that you're going to keep in.
You can definitely not take him and still get the legendary.
And for people that are just starting out and only have a few legendaries, like you don't need this. It's not a core part of this deck. It was just nice. Sun Fury Protector. I'm gonna lump this in, okay, with Defender of Argus. And I know they're different cards, but I want to lump them in and just have you talk a little bit about how you are playing Taunt, especially as you got maybe 7-6-5-4 on the ladder. How you were playing these guys with taunts, because you were intentionally avoiding taunting your 8/8s. You were intentionally, strategically, sometimes taunting one minion instead of two. So just tell me what you think about taunt in general and these four guys.
So I just am learning the cards. I don't know any of them,
Yeah.
So there's this guy called Black Knight, and he, as I got further up in the ranks, started to show up a lot in a lot of the Druid decks, a lot of the control decks, and even a lot of the mid-range and very few of the beatdown decks. But what he does is when he comes into play, he kills the guy with taunt that your opponent has. And what I've realized, the key to Sun Fury Protector and Defender of Argus is you trying to create these really powerful turns where you go giant, taunt them both, and that's like, now you have to deal with my guys, you can't attack me, your whole game plan is changed and distorted. But if they have Black Knight, it's much more difficult. And also, sometimes you want to protect your bigger guys. They can only have 2 attacks, and they're 2 4-power creatures. You have an 8/8 and 2 3-toughness guys, and you taunt those. In these game states, taunt is one of the most powerful mechanics in the game, and using it effectively is really important. So there's just a lot of times you got to think about if you can play around Black Knight, or if you can't, they can only play 1.
Well, sure, and they can also just destroy your 8/8. But if you taunt 2 other smaller guys, they now have to deal with your 8/8 and get through 2 taunt. When if you taunt the 8/8, they can kill the taunt and the 8/8 with 1 card.
And sometimes,
and that's something I picked up from watching your stream. I was like, okay, he's making them deal with multiple creatures instead of just going all in and going, if you can kill this 8/8 taunt, like, I'm screwed. Now I have an additional 2 creatures that have taunt, and they still have to deal with the 8/8. They can't just leave an 8/8 in play.
And sometimes you draw 2 taunt cards, and you just want them dealing with those, and then you're going to use your 8/8 and then taunt it as well. So you're going to get an extra attack. That's like getting 8 extra damage.
I also saw you play Sun Fury Protector on turn 2 against a lot of decks, where either you wanted a presence, like you were going to try to rush them, or you were trying to defend. And that's something that I kind of get caught up in, like trying to get maximum value. When in reality, sometimes it just needs to be a 2/3 for 2.
Yeah, you really want to be aware of matchups like Shaman and Paladin, where they can get ahead with their hero ability, making their totems or making their 1/1s, and you just want to keep the board clean. And sometimes you just need a 2/3 donk, and that's effective.
Knock down your creatures.
And you have to be aware of those situations. You've noticed I don't play it every time. It just depends on what I'm feeling they're going to be strategically doing.
Yeah. All right. So Earthen Ring Farseer, pretty self-explanatory guy. Just overall solid, right?
This is one of the best cards in the game. It's so versatile. It's always good, and it heals your guys. It heals you. It changes game states. It's 3/3. It's just a great, powerful card. I think almost every deck should be playing it. And I think it is something, if you're not playing with, you should try out and try a lot of different strategies with it. Sometimes you can just attack with a 4 toughness creature and then peel it. Sometimes you heal yourself. Sometimes you save it after you play Lord Jaraxxus to get back up to 15. It's just a really powerful card. It's great on your giants after you attack a 4 toughness or a 4-power creature to make them 7. I mean, it's just super versatile. Great against beatdown, great against control.
Harvest Golem. You had 2 in for a while. You had 1 because you're testing out some other cards. Overall, I know when you first started, you weren't sure about this guy, and then you played him, especially against some beatdown decks, and you came around to him. Where is he at now? Is he on the verge of getting cut, or is he on the verge of just getting 2 back in the deck?
He's not on the verge of either. He's probably a staple 1, and it's because I'm looking for redundancy. This game is a 30-card deck size, and having 3 ofs in your deck gives you a lot of consistency that you can count on drawing throughout the game to play on turn 3. You don't have a problem mulliganing them. If you have specific cards you need in matchups, you can count on drawing them later. For turn 3 or 4, he allows for a lot of powerful turn 7s with Defender of Argus, and he's really solid. He has to be handled, and I never really want to.
And he kind of just
he's just a third or the
That's a good point. You don't really want 2 in your hand.
Yeah.
And he's another Earthen Ring, and he kind of just goes really well with this
We're just trying to create redundancy. Yeah.
All right, Tinkmaster. What do you think about this guy? I mean, a lot's been said in the community about it. Just
bonkers.
Needs to be in
best card
most
in the game.
decks, right?
Best card in the game. It is the #1 card in the game, in my opinion. #1. Tinkmaster is the best card in the game. If they ban a card, it's this guy. That's it. Nothing else to be said. He banishes everything. You can make your guy a 5/5 if you need to. It's a flip, but there are game states where if you make a 5/5, you win almost in the high 90th percentile of the games, and you make a 1/1. It's not devastating because you're just doing it on a 2/2 or something.
Yeah, and many
Best
times
card in the game.
always recommended as, and many places is always recommended as the first legendary that you should create.
First legendary.
So versatile.
Agreed.
All right, Hellfire. I mean, everyone knows about Wrath. I've seen you finish a lot of games with double Hellfire, right?
Yeah.
So that's also where it can really come into play.
Yeah, it's versatile. You have to have it against Murlocs. It's super important against Shaman. There are several other matchups where he's really good. Often they will just sit in my hand in the control matchups waiting to be burn spells, and they combo with the 10 mana to often you can have double Hellfire, Soulfire, and play the Blood Mage Thanos because you can draw your whole deck against some of these control decks, and out of nowhere you just have 13 burn for your 10 mana, and that's a big deal to realize. So they're really good for that, and they're awesome against the control or the beatdown decks. I would never. I don't see cutting them in the current format or with a card pool. So.
Yeah. Shadow Flame is interesting. I know you had two, then it might have even gone out somewhere in the middle when you were playing more of the Druid decks, and now you settled on one. So we know about Hellfire, we know about the Wraths. Why particularly is Shadow Flame, or when is it good? When do you see yourself using it a lot?
Again, the redundancy with the Hellfires. I'm looking for 3 ofs. 4 ofs, you often get your hand clogged, and it allows for an extra Wrath. Also combos quite nicely with, we're getting to Sylvanas Windrunner on a 10 mana situation where they have an 8/8 and other creatures that are smaller than 5 toughness. You can play Sylvanas Windrunner. You can Shadow Flame all their guys and steal their biggest one, and that's a huge advantage once you get to the 10 mana situations of the game.
And I've seen you steal some legendaries like that Ragnaros yesterday.
And it's sweet playing with other people's legendaries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you deal 6 damage. Anything that lives above 6 damage, you're going to get, and that's all the 8/8s, right? It's all the big legendary dragons and so on and so forth. We've talked about Defender. Important, again, to recap, is that you're looking for 3 ups, and this gives you a 3rd Hellfire. And that's a pattern that we saw.
And this is just a mechanic I'm noticing about the game. With the deck size, the hand size, the how you draw cards, etc.
Yeah.
3 seems to be redundant, and 4 seems to be overkill.
Yeah. So Siphon Souls, again, a very stable control in any Warlock control deck.
You skip Defender?
Yeah, we already talked about it.
Okay, yeah. Defender's bonkers. Play it in almost every deck that isn't just complete dedicated beatdown. Try it out. Figure out if you can play with it well, if you like it. It's something that I really advocate trying to learn about.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's in so many decks right now. Siphon Soul, I've seen a lot of the Warlock control and the Handlock decks play one of this. So what I was going to ask you in the deck list I saw, why do you play 2, or do you like to? Do you ever find yourself, again, too clogged with that 6? Or with just all the legendaries, is it just irreplaceable?
So now I'm playing, like I said, the best players on the planet, right? And almost every game is against someone that's in the top 20 or 30 in the game. And they are trying out, they're thinking players, and they're trying out lots of different deck ideas. They're trying out lots of different legendaries. And I want to have, in my mind, if I draw my whole deck, known that I have 2 solid answers to whatever giant creatures they might play that also restore my life total. The gain 3 life is so big against a lot of these burn decks. Yep. And just knowing that I can kill those minions in the late game gives me a lot of versatility in how I can play the games throughout. I would never cut one. I think you're...
Like them both.
I think you're very off in your deck construction if you're only playing one.
Sylvanas was an addition later on during your run. You actually disenchanted stuff to get to her, to be able to put her in. Have you liked her so far? Because you've only played, I guess, a day with her, right?
Yeah, I love her. She's been really good. She lets you curve out some in games where you couldn't normally curve out. She's cool with the Blood Mage Thanos, Soulfire, 5 damage to your own guy if you need to just steal their one guy. Yep. Again, she combos quite nicely with Shadow Flame to do some cool stuff. And she's just, she was a faceless manipulator for a while. She's been considered a Ragnaros as well. That slot's been kind of up in the air, but I like affecting their game states. I like Death Rattle in this situation. Usually Silence is obsolete at this point. Tinkmaster is the real issue with this guy, but since you have so many giants, usually they've tinked by then if they drew it, and having that mechanic is great.
Yep. The Lord Jaraxxus.
Gotta have a 9-drop.
It's a staple. It's a staple of the original deck that this was crafted from, and I mean,
one of the things, the real key about Lord Jaraxxus is the 15. you get to 3, 2, 5 life often, and they can't quite kill you because you're playing to gain life. You're using your Earthen Ring Farseer. You're using your Siphon Souls, and their deck is linear. They're trying to kill you. They have a plan to do 30 damage plus kill a couple of your guys. And when you play well and gain a bit of life, you end up at like 6, 5 a lot. Playing Lord Jaraxxus, going back up to 15, killing one of their guys, really changes game states. Just puts it over the top. He's the best 9.
Yep. And then, of course, the Giants. I don't know what much needs to be said. I mean, Mountain Giants, of course, really great for the control. Molten Giants, of course, really great for the rush decks, and both seem to be played most of the time. Are there any comments that you want to make about either of the 4 Giants in the deck?
Absolute staples. Exactly like you said, you nailed it. Mountain Giants, great against control. Molten Giant, great against beatdown. Tune in soon. I have some really new, innovative ideas now that I've played for a few days. I'm going to be changing quite a bit, actually. Going forward, trying out new things as I ascend to #1 in the planet, which I will be doing. Hopefully, that's my goal. Who knows if that'll happen? I haven't played the best guys yet. I played some Tides of Time, all the guys that you guys know, Puffins, whatever, Raynads. I beat them pretty consistently, but I don't think they're the best. I just think they're some of the best. So there are going to be some great minds out there. And if you tune in, check out the Giants and how we change them. But try them out. They're awesome. Mountain Giant, you play them on turn 4 as often as you can. That's the reason you don't really curve out. And Molten Giant, it allows for some really powerful turns once you get to 10 life, where you can go 0/0 Defender of Argus in games where they think they have them locked up, and you just add 20 Defender or 18 Defender out of nowhere for 4 mana with a Defender of Argus, or for 2 mana with a Sun Fury Protector.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that is a full breakdown, actually an in-depth breakdown of what is an old school deck as far as Hearthstone goes, but with some new changes and a literal proof that you can go from 25 to legendary in 2.5 days. Maybe not everyone, but with the right deck and with a consistent dedication to a specific deck, which I know you credited to me when we were talking. Like, you weren't going to change. You were going to master this deck.
Yeah.
And now that you've got to legendary, as you grind up, you might learn some other classes, but it was important for you to master one deck. So another tip, if people are looking to replicate this, play a deck and master it as you grind down and before you switch.
Yeah, and definitely, again, guys, if you want to build this deck cheap, you can. You don't need the Sylvanas windrunner. You don't need the Nat Pagel. You do need the Tinkmaster. If you need 1 legendary or 2 legendaries, Lord Jaraxxus, Tinkmaster, and the other 2, you can kind of just put some commons in. You're going to have similar results, certainly for the first 15 to 20 levels. And then it's going to get more difficult, and you might have to make some investments. But I definitely see it easy going from 25 to 10 if you take the time to dedicate and learn the nuance of the deck.
Yep. All right, man. Thanks, and we'll see you guys later.
Warlocks.